Hello and welcome back to a rather sad David 67 doing a post-match reaction to the very disappointing Celtic 1-1 draw with Kilmarnock yesterday afternoon in the Scottish Premiership. The title of the video is Deja Vu all over again, which basically it's the same old things that I've been saying after quite a lot of games, the same old things that Brendan Rodgers is saying after the games. It is deja vu, i.e., it's happened before, and it's happening again, and again. As a few of you who've had discussions and sharing opinions, etc., through the comment section, what I really get so frustrated and annoyed at is hearing Brendan Rodgers in his post-match videos, all on the BBC, the Celtic channel, the radio, reading it in the press, etc., or his pre-match videos, pre-match conferences. It's the same old rubbish you hear from Rodgers, and the reporters never ever follow it up. Never. Right, so Celtic didn't defend very well in the last half hour. Why was that? When you maybe could have thought about closing the game down, strengthening defence, nullifying the threat that Kilmarnock were posing out wide. Why was it the same old things? We'll take off a winger, we'll put on a winger. We'll take off a winger, we'll put off a winger. Oh, we'll take off our left back, who is a better defender, and we'll shove on basically a left-sided wide player who can't defend for toffee, who isn't anywhere as good as Taylor in the air. Not that Taylor's any is good in the air. I'm not going to say that Greg Taylor at 5'7" is a wonderful player in the air. However, at 5'7", he can basically defend. He has an ability in the air. He has a strength to hold off challenges and outmuscle players. And so we shove on a left back who can't defend. Barnaby had some half decent games when he was in replacing Taylor, but in all those games he was defensively very, very suspect. Just in those other games, we got away with it. Same way, Stephen Welsh. I was reading before the game some very interesting stats comparing Stephen Welsh's starts for Celtic with Gustav Lagerbielke's stats as starter in central defence for Celtic this season. It's chalk and cheese. Welsh isn't winning aerial duels, not winning tackles, not winning duels on the ground, being beaten by players, not intercepting, not anticipating and cutting out passes, not making defensive clearances, compared to Lagerbielke, who had good stats in all those various different things. For the season, Scales and Lagerbielke have similar stats. Scales' stats have been steadily going down and down recently, although they're still very decent. And yet again, we got away with it against Ross County. We got away with it against St Mirren, although that was a better performance. We struggled against Aberdeen, and yet it's the same old defence, same old defensive setup as well. And that's the other thing that really gets to me, is why the reporters aren't saying to Rodgers, why don't you change things in central defence? If you're 1-0 up and we're going and it's 10 minutes to go, why aren't you strengthening defence? Why are you not going to a flat back five? Or going to three central defenders and keeping Burnaby and Ralston more deeper, shoving McGregor in front of the central back three, or maybe we bring on Tomoki Iwata. What's the point of having Iwata, a player who can play central midfield, defensive midfield, can play fullback, can play centre back? He did a good job deputising in central defence end of last season, and yet Iwata's job under Rodgers seems to be either being injured or sitting on the bench watching his teammates flounder. Iwata came to this league with a very good reputation from Japanese football, a player on the fringes of the current Japanese squad, a player who, in his wee little purple patch, when he did get to play for Celtic prior to his injury, was back on the radar to get into the Japanese squad for the Asian Cup. He then got injured, and that dropped away. we've got on the bench Mike Nawrocki. Mike Nawrocki, on the fringes of the current Polish squad as a central defender, came with a good reputation, good defender. Hasn't really been at his best at Celtic, to be fair to him. He played a game, then a long spell at injured, and then a long spell sitting on the bench, watching primarily CCV and Scales at central defence, not really even getting much of a chance to come off the bench because Nat Phillips was the bench warmer at that time. And yet, we're 1-0 up. It's 10 minutes to go, it's 5 minutes to go, we're going into injury time, added time, and nothing's changing. Same formation, same tactics, same setup, not looking to solve any of the problems that Derek McInnes created for Celtic when he changed his players, changed the formations, changed the way that people were playing, responded to what Rodgers had done, created a system to nullify what Rodgers had put on the pitch. Celtic started the game fine, got themselves into the game, had a nice wee half-hour spell towards going into half-time. Really nice goal from Kyogo. Celtic managed to get the ball to Ralston and a wee bit of space on the edge of the box, and then run a very, very clever pinpoint cross towards the back post. Kyogo very cleverly pulled away from the defender, using Ida as a shield in the front, and Maeda drawing the other defender away from Kyogo. Kyogo, lovely header back across the goal, pretty much unstoppable. We had a couple of other chances in the first half. McGregor blazed the ball over the bar from about 8-10 yards. Matt O'Reilly, rather powder puff, ineffectual shot that was fairly easily saved by the Kilmarnock goalkeeper, similar in the second half. A really good chance from Matt Riley, and he hit the shot, not at his best, and the Kilmarnock goalkeeper made a comfortable save. And then, as is so often the case, about 10 minutes to go, Bernardo, again 8-10 yards out from the goal, puts it over the bar. At least he needs to be making the goalkeeper make the save. To me, it's chalk and cheese. Players like O'Reilly, Bernardo, McGregor, all of whom went into the winter break in good form, playing well, taking their chances, creating good chances, playing cleverly. All of them have dropped back from being 7, 8, 9s out of 10 to 4, 5, 6s out of 10. I don't think I would have given any Celtic players yesterday anything more than a 5. To be fair, Joe Hart did make 2 or 3 very, very good saves, but for me, he really probably should be doing better at that back post header from Watson. It was down into the corner, but not into the actual corner. It was a savable header. It wasn't with an awful lot of pace, and I think Hart should have done more to save that. However, having said that, 2 saves before that had been brilliant saves from excellent headers, close in on goal, and he did make a fairly routine save just about as the final whistle went, when Kilmarnock could easily have stolen the game. But as I said in the start of the video, it's deja vu all over again. We're talking about the same things again and again. Defence not well set up, defence not clever tactically. Very, very clear that Kilmarnock's players knew exactly what they were going to do when they were on the pitch. They got told different things to do by McInnes as the game went on, because he responded to what Celtic were doing. Then in the second half, as has been the case in so many games this season, the other team's manager makes changes, puts on different players, or with the same players uses them in a different system, creates problems for Celtic, and Celtic don't find a solution. And that comes down to almost 100% down to Rodgers and to Callum McGregor, and maybe Joe Hart. If we had a nice, strong, loud central midfielder like Scott Brown, Neil Lennon, Paul Lambert, etc. Or we had a nice dominant centre half in like the centre back in the good old days of Billy McNeil, or a defender who takes control and gets the players all in the right positions. But Celtic are currently a very quiet team, and a team that often plays without much passion and aggression, which is such a contrast to the team that we saw on the pitch for Celtic the last 2 seasons, and actually such a contrast from many Celtic teams I've watched over 52 years of watching Celtic. It's a team that doesn't seem to really play as a team if things start to go wrong. It's not a team that seems to know what to do when number one tactic doesn't work. Players on the pitch have to have that ability to change things themselves and respond to uh, what the other team are doing in front of them, but also the manager needs to be there with his sideline instructions and with his substitutions to change things around. And Rodgers doesn't change things around. It's replacing one player with a very similar player, and everything stays the same. Going into that last 10 minutes, great, we need to play attractive football, but getting 3 points is more important than anything else. And so why not put on an extra central defender, have a nice, strong back three, keep the fullbacks back defensively. Fullbacks then stop Kilmarnock getting out wide. Fullbacks then can concentrate on marking their man, rather than, as it was for the goal, Burnaby and Ralston both get drawn into the centre because Welsh and Scales weren't doing a good enough job in the middle, creating a lot of space out wide. The ball goes from one side of Kilmarnock's attack to the back post. Burnaby drawn into the middle because there are more players in the middle than Scales and Welsh are coping with. Not that they were marking them very well. And Watson, not a big player, not a strong player, not particularly good in the air. Nice header, but it was a nice header. It wasn't a brilliant header. And Hart didn't quite save it. Goal down primarily to poor defensive setup, lack of defenders who can defend, Ralston and Burnaby drawn into the middle, and Kilmarnock cleverly exploiting that, getting the space on our right, their left, and then our fullback comes in far too much, which has happened so many times with Burnaby, and Kilmarnock knew we draw Burnaby into the middle, Watson or someone similar coming in off the right wing is going to be there to have a chance to score, and Watson took his chance. So, as I said, deja vu all over again. Celtic get themselves on top and they get some nice chances. We don't put them away. As I said, Palmer had a chance to score. McGregor, O'Reilly had chances to score in the first half. A few times Kyogo and Ida managed to break their way through 5, 6, 7, 8 defenders. Couldn't really get a proper chance at goal because Kilmarnock's defenders funneled back. They knew what to do if one defender was beaten. They knew how to cover for each other. The goalkeeper knew how his defenders were going to defend, and so he was able to change the way that he set himself up. Basically, Kilmarnock did all the things that we needed to do. Defended well organised. Each player knew what to do, and they did what they were told. The manager changed things around, changed the players, the way they were set up to respond to Celtic, put on new players to change the way that Celtic had what problems Celtic had to solve, and we were clueless. Watched quite a few expert ex-player pundits and a lot of Celtic fan sites. I am mystified why there is not more criticism of Brendan Rodgers, because 75% of what happens on the pitch is what he's telling the players to do when they go on the pitch, or what he's telling the players to do once they're on the pitch and the game's actually getting going. It comes down to original selections. It comes down to changing the setup on the pitch. It comes down to substitutions actually making a difference. And Rodgers is doing none of those things. Now, the players seem to me a bunch of players who are not playing for each other and they're not playing for the badge. They seem unhappy, dispirited, demotivated, lost. Clueless was another word that I thought of, and many other people have said in their videos and their articles, etc. And that it just is. Now, these players, to a large extent, are the players that we had on the pitch the last couple of years, the key players, the O'Reillys and the Kyogos, the Maidas, um, Hart in goals. Ralston has been there for years and years. He played well under Ange Postecoglou. He was able to balance his attacking and his defence under Ange Postecoglou. He wasn't a defensive liability. Greg Taylor the same for his 2 years under Postecoglou, and yet under Rodgers, Ralston and Taylor aren't really good enough. Welsh isn't good enough, but yet gets picked again and again until CCV comes back. We have definitely got better defenders in Nawrocki and Lagerbielke, except Brendan Rodgers will never, it appears, play Lagerbielke in a green and white shirt for one reason or another. I suspect that Lagerbielke must have done something in training that's blotted his copybook for the rest of his Celtic career, but and the other recurring theme here is blaming the board. Well, Kilmarnock's starting 11, the same players they had pre-winter transfer break. They did bring on a couple of their new signings as late subs, but it was a 19-year-old that they've brought through into the team that scored the goal. It was their core players that they've had all season from the start that made the changes. So, yes, we could have bought more players in the transfer break, but we didn't. And the players we have on the pitch are more than good enough to be Scottish champions. We haven't got Starfelt, we haven't got Jota, but we've got Palma, who is a good player, whose form is in and out. A few nice touches yesterday, and then he faded away, and then he's off to be replaced by Yang. Kuhn, again, another atrocious performance. Maeda, pretty ineffectual. O'Reilly really got off the ball. Callum McGregor got off the ball. Nobody is stepping up to take over from Callum McGregor when he's swamped with Kilmarnock putting players all around him to cut off his passes away. Welsh and Scales just don't seem to know how to get the ball out of defence properly. Maybe one of the options is just kicking the ball up the other end, relying on maybe Ida to win a free kick. That's what we could do in the old days with a player like Odson and Edward up front, or in the good old days, John Hart's and Chris Sutton. Sometimes you just kick the ball up the other end to the vague area that your centre forward target man is, and the other defender on the opposition fouls him. It's a tactic a lot of teams use against us to get themselves out of defensive situations. You kick the ball up the pitch. You've got your striker standing on the halfway line. He runs onto the ball, or he takes the ball and the opposition defender fouls him, and you get a foul on the halfway line or halfway inside the opposition half, and suddenly you're on the attack and not being pressurised. It's, as I've said so many times before, it's deja vu. It's sideways pass, backwards pass. You get the ball forward to halfway line, and then suddenly McGregor, O'Reilly, Maeda, Palma is turning around, and it's back to Scales, it's back to Welsh, Scales, Ralston, Scales, Welsh, Taylor, Hart, out to the fullback, into the centre backs, back to the goalkeeper. It's boring, it's ineffectual, it's not going to win games, and that is down to the players, it's down to the manager. The board, the recruitment team should have done more in the transfer window, or maybe they did do, but they're not telling us what they did, what went wrong, who they tried to sign, why they couldn't sign them, all these things. There's lots and lots and lots of unanswered questions. Going forward, I get less optimistic after each game. However, we are top of the table by 1 point. If we can play poorly, so can our big rivals. If Kilmarnock can play at or above their basic level, so can St Johnstone, so can Motherwell. Kilmarnock at the start of the season did beat Rangers. These kind of things can still happen. Our team tends to not find solutions to problems. Our big rivals, quite often this season, since they changed their manager, find solutions to problems. They get a bit of luck on the pitch for one reason or another, and they take advantage of it. However, with Rodgers doing his job, with Rodgers being a £3 million manager, and these players that are on the pitch, we've got the team to win the championship and to win the cup double. Now, this is so reminiscent for me for the Liverpool season 10 years ago. As some of you may be aware, I'm a big Liverpool fan, as well as being a massive Celtic fan. Celtic are my absolute number one club. Liverpool would be number two, primarily because my big hero as a boy, Ken Dalglish, went to them in '77 and had an absolutely wonderful career for them as well. So I've been a committed, devoted Celtic fan since I was 4 or 5, and been a Celtic and Liverpool fan since '77. So this is so reminiscent of 10 years ago when Rodgers blew a 5-point lead for Liverpool at top of the English Premiership. Same sorts of things. Not changing his formations, not changing his team around, not giving the opposition problems to solve, just shoving out the same formations that admittedly had worked really well up until that point. But other coaches, other managers, the Mourinho's, etc., worked out what Rodgers' team were going to do, and they set the team up to counteract Liverpool's strengths and pick on Liverpool's weaknesses, and that lead dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, then disappeared, and Rodgers didn't have a clue as to do what he needed to do to change things around. There were games where Liverpool had a nice lead. Rodgers, rather than changing things to preserve the 2-0 or 3-0, 3-1 lead, such as the game late in the season against Crystal Palace, same old rubbish. No idea about how to make the game safe, and that turned into a draw, which then led to losing the title at the end of the season. Now, I really hope that Rodgers has learned from his mistakes from the past, but it doesn't seem he has, because it's the same sorts of errors that he's been making in his career all the time. In his first spell at Celtic, he never really had that problem of having to save games, change things, because Celtic's players at that point were so much better than all the other teams. I think also there are a number of good managers now in the Scottish Premier League who actually have different ideas of how to play football and different ideas about how you can change things around with your players, and also how to get the most out of players. Rodgers seems to know how to get the least out of many of our players, and certainly doesn't seem to know how to get the most out of any of our players at the moment. So all a wee bit pessimistic, all a wee bit downhearted. However, the sun has come up today. It's another day. Let's cross our fingers that St Johnstone have one of those days, as any club can, where they play well, the other team don't play as well as they can do. There's the odd deflection that goes one way. Maybe there's going to be a controversial decision from VAR for the first time in the history of VAR in Scotland, which goes against Rangers rather than for Rangers. You never know. However, there are plenty of games still to go. There are 2 games against Rangers still to go, one at home, one away. If we get our best 11 players on the pitch, playing at their best in a formation and tactical style that is going to beat Rangers, as was the case in the first game of the season and in the second game of the season against Rangers. We can and will win the title. The players need a boost in their confidence. The players need supported, and that is what we as fans can do, is cheer them on. I know it is they need to do something on the pitch to make us cheer them on, but maybe cheering them on helps them do those different things on the pitch. So, have to confess, this was supposed to be a fairly short video. It's turned into a long ranty video. I do apologise. For those new to the channel, please do consider clicking that subscribe button. There's a like button as well, and as always, there's the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to those. And later today, I'm going to watch the Celtic women's side on the TV, as long as the game's still on and Rangers haven't cancelled that as well. And we'll do a further video about the Kilmarnock match on Monday, and I'll do a post-match reaction to the Celtic Rangers women's match also tomorrow. So for today, thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with the stupid old man ranting for 25 minutes. Chat again tomorrow. Goodbye and hail, hail.